Well, good morning. My name is Kim Hansen. For those of you I haven't had a chance to meet, I'm the president here at the Bloomington Chamber. And this is Conversations with Kim. I want to first of all thank the Mall of America, our series sponsor. We greatly appreciate the partnership that we have with the mall on a lot of different levels. But this one in particular, because we talk about rather hyper-local issues that happen to us right here in Bloomington, even though this incorporates all of Hennepin County. We do appreciate the mall's voice in helping us put these together. So, how many of you are here from the hospitality industry? Yep. Okay, great. This is important. Have you all heard about organics recycling? So you've been hearing about the ordinance, yes? And I hope that you have a lot of questions. How we're going to do this today? Normally you hear me talk a lot, but we're going to let the experts, we're going to let John and Andre talk about this. We'll do a presentation for about 25 minutes. I'm going to ask a couple questions, and then you guys, I'm going to open it up. We'd love to have a dialogue with all of you so that you can drill down and get the information that you need about this topic. So I'm going to introduce our speakers, and of course my bios that I nicely printed are sitting on my desk. Yeah, you know, it's one of those weeks. How about the time change too? Anybody? Yeah, okay. Okay, we know. So we've got John Jaimez, and John is, I'm going to turn it this way so I can actually see it. There we go. He is the Organics and Recycling Specialist with Hennepin County, the Department of Environment and Energy. John's work focuses on growing organics, the organics diversion through outreach and technical assistance, new policies and programs, which you're going to hear a lot about today, ensuring adequate composting capacity. You know, you got to put the stuff somewhere, right? That's so important. And exploring additional organics processing opportunities, including anaerobic digestion. Okay, so John has a BS in Environmental Studies from Northland College and an MA in Environmental Policy from the Humphrey School of Public Affairs at the University of Minnesota. Welcome, John Jaimez.
Good morning, everybody. I was telling Kim that I am not a morning person, so I appreciate everybody being here bright and early on this, not really bright, gloomily and early on this beautiful March morning. So I'm here to talk about business organics recycling requirements, and Andre is going to talk about resources to help people come into compliance with those requirements.
Why don't I read Andre's bio really quick so that people can understand his area of expertise. So Andre is Jean is a bachelor's degree from the College of Food, Agricultural, and Natural Sciences from the University of Minnesota, St. Paul campus.
Yep.
It's a beautiful site. He has been with Hennepin County for 7 years. Prior to that, he had a limited duration recycle intern, and so he has been with the county nearly 10 years in total, and he has helped develop the county's business recycling program in 2013 and has worked exclusively on the business recycling since. So this is wonderful to have both of your sets of expertise here with us today.
So Hennepin County has been working on organics recycling since 2002, so over 15 years, even though it may be a little bit newer to some of you in the room. We have put various incentives in place for more than a decade, and we've tried to really do this on a voluntary basis as much as possible. With new state recycling goals in place which require counties to reach a 75% recycling rate, which means 75% of the waste that gets generated needs to be recycled. We have been talking about organics requirements for quite some time. So just to give you a little bit of background on this, like I said, internally staff have been talking about organics requirements for years. We did a public engagement process that started in 2017 that included focus groups with representatives from the sectors that are going to be affected by the requirements. And then also in 2018, we did another entire year of engagement with businesses and the business associations that represent the sectors that are affected. So gathered a lot of feedback, did a lot of public engagement. This wasn't something that was done in a vacuum and just a few of us huddled around a table in our office. So even though you may not have heard about it until recently, we've had a lot of discussions. So before I go further, I just want to define what I mean by organics. So when we talk about organics, we're talking about the biodegradable parts of our trash that can be separated out from the trash to be either reused or recycled. Talking about all food scraps, so that includes stuff that you wouldn't put in your backyard compost bin, so meat, dairy products, bones, any type of food scrap can be separated out for recycling. Also, soiled paper products that are not coated with plastic. So we're talking about napkins, paper towels, Kleenexes, those types of things. Certain types of paper plates like Chinette, which don't really have any kind of plastic coating on them. A great example of a paper product that has plastic coating are just regular coffee cups like this. So there's a plastic lining on the inside so that the hot coffee doesn't seep out and get in your lap, and then you end up having to sue a certain fast food chain, right? We all know about that. So, so there is lots of products like this, the cold cups that you get at McDonald's, Burger King, Culver's, wherever, those all have plastic lining as well. So unless it specifically says that it's compostable, there are compostable coffee cups, there are compostable cold cups, and they would have one of those. Actually, this sign is a little bit old. This symbol right here on the left, this is from the Biodegradable Products Institute, and they are the certification body in North America that certifies that a product is compostable. So certified compostable plastic foodware and compostable bags that are actually certified by BPI, those are okay for organics recycling. But lots of other paper products that you can't necessarily see that plastic coating on, if they're not clearly marked as compostable, those should go in the trash. They shouldn't go in your recycling bin, and they shouldn't go in the organics bin. So how did we get to requirements? I gave you a little bit of insight into how we got there. For us, we've been talking about it for a long time. We've been tracking what's going on in other jurisdictions around the country that have been requiring organics recycling. Every 6 years, counties are required to put together something called a solid waste management master plan. So the state delegates waste management authority to all of the counties. The state sets these overarching goals for what needs to be reached in terms of how waste needs to be processed, how waste should be recycled, and then the counties look at those goals and objectives, and we have to put together these plans every 6 years. They have to be approved by our county board, and then they get sent to the state for approval. At the end of 2017, the Hennepin County Board approved our 2018 master plan, and that plan includes literally over 100 strategies aimed at the goals of recycling 75% of our trash and achieving zero waste to landfills by 2030. Those are the two overarching goals that we're shooting for. And we're going to do this mainly by preventing waste and capturing the maximum value from materials that could be recovered and recycled, especially organics. So organics are by far the best opportunity for us to reach that 75% recycling goal. For more than 30 years, we've had curbside recycling in place, and we continue to do a lot of work on what we call conventional recycling, trying to recycle cans, bottles, paper, various types of plastic, and that has really plateaued. We have a little bit of incremental progress we make sometimes, but that is really, we've kind of maxed out on conventional recycling. And so organics, again, the food scraps and the food soiled paper products, those make up 30% of our trash. So when we look at trash and we do waste sorts and we measure what's in it, we measure that by weight. That's the way that we try to normalize the data. And 30% of what goes in our trash, when you put together trash from residential sources, commercial sources, 30% is organics. We've done waste sorts here for more than a decade. There's been waste sorts done all over the country. Every time it comes out, I tease everybody in the office. I say, how much organics do you think is in there? And they go, about 30%. Yep, about 30%. It almost always comes out that way. So if you slice and dice it by individual sectors and you look at stuff just coming out of restaurants or just out of hotels or just out of schools, those numbers will be different. But overall, if you put it all in one big pile, it's about 30% is organics. And we haven't been recycling a whole bunch of it. So again, that's why organics is the key to hitting 75% recycling and zero waste to landfill. And so we'd like to put that stuff to a better, higher use, do that by feeding people and animals, composting that material to create good soil amendment products, and if we do end up having an anaerobic digestion facility, which is something I'm working on, is that we could also get energy out of that food waste in addition to a soil amendment type of product, a compost-like product. Feel free, are you okay with people asking questions as I go along, or should we wait until
Well, yeah, why don't you get the main points of this?
Okay. So don't ask me questions now. Don't interrupt me. We'll ask questions afterward. All right, so now the nitty-gritty, the requirements. So there are, as part of the 2018 Solid Waste Management Master Plan, a key part of that was revising our 30-year-old recycling ordinance called Ordinance 13, that if you would have read it before we revised it, it wouldn't make any sense because the whole waste and recycling industry in the country and in the county changed so much that it really didn't even apply anymore. So we were looking at almost completely rewriting that ordinance and including new requirements for cities, for how residential waste is handled, and also for businesses. A key part of those changes are organics recycling requirements for the residential sector and the commercial sector. So even though earlier I told you that organics includes more than just food waste, for the organics recycling requirements for the commercial sector, we are focusing only on food waste. And one of the key reasons is that we're trying to minimize the contamination of the organics that get separated that will then either go for composting or be fed to animals or possibly to digestion. How many of you have heard about China not taking any of our recyclables anymore? All right, so the key reason why China isn't taking that material is because we were sending them a whole bunch of trash in that recycling. And they got tired of getting all of our trash, and even the recyclable materials were really dirty and a low quality because that trash, for example, was degrading the quality of the paper. So you've heard all over the place, it's been in the New York Times, it's been on 60 Minutes, it's been all over the place about the national sword policy of China and how they're not taking our recyclables, and that has radically affected the recycling industry in the United States. The same thing is kind of looming on the horizon for organics if we don't keep it clean. So nobody wants compost with glass in it and little pieces of plastic and other junk in there. The farmers don't want to feed their hogs food waste that has plastic in it and spoons and forks and all of that stuff. So we're trying to minimize the possibility for it to be contaminated. One of the biggest sources of contamination is when you collect things in public-facing areas, which we call front of house, right? Front of house and back of house. So if you're collecting organics just back of house in a restaurant or a hotel, it's much easier to train a small number of people and to collect just food waste and say, just put food in there. That's much easier than having an organics container out in the lobby or somewhere where the public has access to it, and they don't know anything about organics, or even if they do, they're bringing in a Caribou coffee cup or some other place's coffee cup, and they dump it in that organics container along with their food waste. So that's why we're collecting only back of house and only food waste, to try to make this as simple to implement as possible and to keep the organics as clean as possible. So we're requiring businesses that generate large quantities of food to implement food waste recycling by January 1st of next year. And this is what triggers whether or not you have to comply. It applies to businesses in all of these sectors, so restaurants, food manufacturers, food wholesalers and distributors, grocery stores, hotels, hospitals, sport venues, event centers, caterers, nursing and residential care facilities, office buildings with dining services, farmers markets, food shelves, colleges and universities that have dining services. We know some of them don't. Shopping centers, airports, golf and country clubs, and then public and rentable commissaries and kitchens. Those are the sectors that we're focusing on. We know these sectors touch a lot of food in one way or another and generally can generate a lot of food waste. So if you're in one of these sectors and you generate 1 ton of trash or more per week, if you don't know your quantities, then you could also look at how much trash service you contract for. So if you contract for 8 cubic yards or more per week, that's the equivalent of 1 ton. So if you generate 1 ton or more, you're in these sectors, then you have to comply. If you're not in one of these sectors, or you don't generate that much trash on a weekly basis, then these requirements do not apply to you. So if the requirements apply, how do you comply? So businesses within those sectors must have food waste recycling service in place. You must provide waste collection containers, those food waste containers, back of house, and they have to be properly labeled. And then you must actually use them, not just have them in place, but you must separate the food waste and put the material into those containers. For multi-tenant buildings, we have worked on a voluntary basis with hundreds of businesses over the years. So we've run into many cases where in multi-tenant buildings, there are tenants who want to do organics recycling, and for one reason or another, it doesn't work out with their property manager or property owner. So for those cases, what we're saying, if you're the owner or manager of a multi-tenant facility and you have 1 or more tenants who have to comply with these requirements, you have 2 choices. You either can provide that food waste recycling service to them, or you have to at least allow them to set it up on their own and facilitate them getting the service if you don't want to do it yourself. One way or the other, they have to comply, and you have to allow them to comply. These are the acceptable methods for recycling food waste. One is food donation, so donating the food, still edible food that then can be given to people in need. If you use food donation, in every case we've ever seen, that will only help you manage typically less than 50% of your food waste. So what we're saying here is if you use food donation, which is fantastic, you have to do it in combination with one of these other methods unless you can demonstrate that the vast majority of your food waste is taken care of by just food donation. So if you can demonstrate that, then fantastic. If not, you also have to do one of these other things. Food to animals, commercial composting, possibly anaerobic digestion in the future. We know that things are always changing, so if there's another method that comes out, we know of some other unique things right now that we have to look at on a case-by-case basis. You can come to the county and say, hey, this is what I want to do with my food waste. It's not one of these other things. We'll review it, and if it looks like a good way to recycle your food waste, and it's not just disposing of it, then you can get approval by the county. Sewering food waste. So a lot of people don't know this, but you're not supposed to sewer a substantial amount of your food waste according to what are called the waste discharge rules by the agency that manages our sewer system, Metropolitan Council Environmental Services, MCES. They're the ones who regulate the sewer system. So these are their rules. Their rules say that disposing of any more than incidental amounts of food waste through the public sewer system to avoid off-site disposal is prohibited by their ordinance, their sewer waste discharge rules. So sewering your food waste as your primary method of managing your food waste is not a way to comply with these requirements. So how much does it cost? We very specifically looked at large quantity generators of food waste based on our experience that hopefully you can either break even or possibly even reduce your costs a little bit by eliminating some of your trash disposal. So if you have a lot of food waste that's going in your trash, when you pull that out of your trash, hopefully you can reduce the frequency of your trash pickup. And if you're a commercial customer, that's the biggest cost savings that you're going to get is by reducing the frequency of pickup. Even sometimes there's been cases that we've run into where you increase the size of your dumpster, but you only get that picked up once instead of 4 times a week from a smaller dumpster, because the biggest cost to the hauler is to send a truck and a driver out to your site to pick up that trash. So if you're using dumpster service, that is the greatest way that you're going to be able to reduce your costs. Based on data that we have, Andre is going to talk about our business recycling grants and how that can help you come into compliance. We've had that program in place for 4 or 5 years now, maybe longer, something like that. So we have hundreds of grantees that we've worked with, most of them on setting up organics recycling, and this cost data comes from that group of grantees. This is kind of the middle point, so they're not saying that this is exactly what it's going to cost you, but based on the best cost information we have, that middle or median monthly cost per cubic yard of waste, organics is actually a little bit less than trash. So it's not as low as recycling. Recycling numbers are actually starting to go up because of what we were talking about earlier. But you know, it's not the most expensive. Obviously, it's an additional service, but if you can, we often refer to as right sizing your trash. People oftentimes have more trash service than they need. So if you can right size your trash and add the organics, hopefully you'll at least break even. There are also requirements for conventional recycling that were in the ordinance that apply to the multifamily sector and the business sector. And in a nutshell, it says that you have to provide adequate service levels. We don't want to see overflowing dumpsters of recycling. That means you don't have an adequate service level. Do education and properly label containers. For the business requirements, all we did was incorporate the state requirements that are already in place. And the state requirements say that if you have at least 4 cubic yards of trash service per week, that you have to have recycling in place. And then we know most businesses do. We've run into some cases where people don't, but that's what the state requirement is, and it's also now the county requirement. What about cities, right? Are we just picking on businesses? No, we're not just picking on businesses. We want everybody to do a better job at this. So cities are going to be required to have organics recycling offered as well. So starting January 1st, 2022, cities must provide the opportunity for their residents to participate in curbside programs for organics collection. And they have a couple of options. They can either contract for the service citywide, or they could require their haulers, if they have a whole bunch of different haulers that pick up the trash, to say that they have to provide organics recycling service to the customers that want it. The participation will be opt-in, so not every household has to do it. If you want to do it, then you opt in to do it. Again, that's another way to keep the material clean. We know that that's a great way to keep the material very clean. Cities with really low populations, less than 10,000, they're officially referred to as cities of the fourth class, which are basically all of these cities in western Hennepin. They can comply by establishing at least one drop-off. They don't have to do it curbside. We hope that they will, but they don't have to. The cities that are highlighted in blue, they already comply. They already have organics recycling offered to their residents. The ones in yellow are the ones that are not cities of the fourth class and will have to establish a program by January 1st, 2022. So Northwest Plymouth will have to. All right, I think this is my last slide. So what are we going to be doing here in the near future? The requirements passed literally at the very end of November, and then we had a little tiny bit of December before everybody went on holidays and didn't come back until after January. So we weren't sure that they were going to pass until pretty much December. And so we were working completely on that, and at the same time putting together our plan for 2019 to then implement this. So 2019 was in full swing as soon as we came back, whatever that was, January 2nd. And we are working on a whole lot of fact sheets, guidance documents, various types of communication, most of which will be done by the end of this month, end of the first quarter. And then starting next quarter, we're going to be doing a whole lot of promotion and outreach. We're going to be, we have these plain language guidance documents to say, how do I figure out whether I have 8 cubic yards of trash service or not? How do I know if I have 1 ton of trash? Those types of things are all being put together right now, so I don't have them with me. I do have a fact sheet that summarizes what was in my presentation that I'll hand around. And then if you go to the website that's in there, we'll have these other guidance documents in the very near future. We're also going to be sending letters to people that we think are affected by the requirements with more information. As things roll out and we run in, people who are trying to comply run into barriers and issues that we haven't thought of, which we know there are always unique circumstances, please contact us. We want to work with you. The first couple years, staff are in agreement. This is what we communicated to the county board, that for us, enforcement is going to be targeted assistance. We want to help people recycle their food waste. We're not looking to slap people on the wrist and send out citations. That's not what we're looking to do. We want to get this material recycled. So with that, I'll hand it over to Andre, and I'll pass around the fact sheets.
Good morning, I'm Andre. I'll touch on the resources as John alluded to. So the resources have been around since 2013, but even kind of before that, more informally. They are the resources, the grants, the signs, the staff to provide technical assistance and guidance are not contingent upon the requirements, although we will begin to prioritize things like especially the grant funding, where we may look to fund projects that do organics more. But the resources are available to businesses, large and small, nonprofits as well. So if you know anyone or you yourself are not in the requirements, you can still pursue resources as well. Or if you know businesses that do not fall in the requirement, you can still send them our way. So really the summary of the resources are right here, these 3 bullet points. On-site assistance, that can be 15 minutes walking through with you. That can be short trainings, that can be long trainings. We can customize it to your needs and how long you allow us at your site. Signs and labels to meet the requirements, but also just to educate people, because we are not always there to tell people where to put things. We don't always have nifty nabbers to grab things out and put them in the right bin, nor do we want to, nor do we have time to do that. So the signs and labels are just one more tool to try and catch them. And you can see the color coding to try and capture their attention before they finally make a decision. And then grant funding. So grant funding focuses primarily on recycling bins, but not exclusively. So we do have a whole guideline of eligible expenses, and one of my slides will touch on that. And we will soon here be offering business organization outreach grants, which is something we started early last year with Minneapolis Regional Chamber. So we want to partner with groups like chambers and associations to further get the word out there more. Because even though our resources have been around for many, many years here, and we're getting really good turnout for grants and resources, we still know there's lots of businesses out there that haven't heard of Hennepin County resources. So we want more help, more voices to help us get it out there. So more on that later on. I'm sure you'll see it publicly, the RFP. On-site assistance, again, short or small. Long, yeah, short or long. Really anything you want us to do. Right now we have webinar options as well. So if we're too busy for you, or if you just want to use the webinar option because your folks are busy, then we have that as well. So contact me and we can see what works for you. So we have a quarterly business e-newsletter, so you can subscribe to that and get quarterly updates. Signage. So we've distributed tens of thousands of signage out there, and that's just annually. So there's many businesses out there, including K-12 schools and multifamily settings, that have that look and feel of the signage and stickers. So it's to your benefit. It's free, but also that look and feel has been around for several years now. And other metro counties have that look and feel of the signage too, so that hopefully someday we get to an idyllic community where everyone knows how to recycle, right? So we'll also have how-to videos, so information videos for people how to sort what's recyclable, but also kind of the end process of what does recycling turn into, what does organics turn into, to kind of close the whole loop and not just get people to recycle like manually, but also kind of the why. Why should they recycle so that they can continue to do it and want to do it? So that's just a sample of all the signs and stickers we have. We try to cover everything. We try to be setting or sector specific. We have dumpster labels as well, and that's a requirement now as well to label your dumpsters. Then the grants, I'll just touch on the big stuff. You can apply $10,000 or less at any time throughout the year as long as funds are available. If you need more than $10,000, you can apply up to $50,000 max. That has quarterly deadlines. So those deadlines are May 15, August 15, and November 15. Oh, first of each of those. 1st of May, 1st of August, and 1st of November. So that's just a sample of eligible expensive, the types of bins that we offer, or you could also propose to purchase your own bins of different shapes and sizes from your own vendors that you select as well. So compactors for recyclables, compostable bags to start organics projects, compostable products if that's the route you really want to go, otherwise reusable servingware, which of course is better than recyclable and compostable versions. 3 months of reimbursement for your hauling if it's new, whether it's recycling or organics, because even though recycling's been here for decades, some people still don't recycle, so we want to help them. And then minor upgrades to docks and enclosures. And then we have restrictions for that just because we know it can get expensive and we want to be able to distribute our grants to as many businesses as possible. So we don't want to just give $50,000 to one business to upgrade their dock. So that's it. I know Kim wanted some dialogue and we want dialogue too, so let's save some time for that.
Yeah, why don't the three of us sit up there? I've got just one question I want to pose to you guys, and then we'll open it up.
So you want us to be up here?
Yeah, let's sit up here so everybody can see us. So we're talking about changing human behavior. And I know you're smiling. You know, we're really trying to change the way we look at trash, right? And changing how to throw things away, making decisions on the fly. And so my question is really geared toward, I kept hearing the word requirement. And when I hear the word requirement, I'm wondering how punitive is this going to be? Or how will you enforce it? How will businesses be impacted with any kind of punishment for not adhering to this?
So
I'm sure many of you are thinking that as well.
So within the ordinance revisions, the county staff do have the authority to enforce this, to issue warnings, to issue citations, and then eventually there would be some type of penalty. So we have that authority and that ability. As I mentioned in the presentation, the first couple years, possibly more than that, we're not going to be focused on that. We're really going to be focused on promoting the new requirements and working with people to come into compliance. So if we find out that you're not in compliance, we'll visit you and say, do you know about the requirements? Have you thought about this? What are you doing? Here's what you need to do. Here are the resources that we have to help you come into compliance. So that's really what we're focused on.
Okay.
The reason why the requirements are in place, thinking of the human behavior side, is we have been working on this for more than 15 years, and we have a number of financial incentives in place for businesses to separate organics, including these grants that have been in place for a long time. Lots of the free signs, the free labels, and in spite of that, and we also have other incentives for cities to do this and schools, et cetera, we've really plateaued on how much organics has been diverted. There was a point where that was growing really rapidly, but we've seen over the last 4 to 5 years that has just completely plateaued, and we're seeing no growth in organics diversion. And so after 15 years and lots of incentives and lots of, the only tools in the toolbox were carrots and pom-poms, we decided that it was time to work on requiring people to do this just like they're required to recycle conventional recyclables.
Okay. I really do want to open it up to all of you and have this conversation. Who's got some questions about this? Yes, Verge.
I'm assuming there is a way for organizations that do not have large amounts of combustible organic materials to be involved. I'm thinking of like small coffee shops and stuff. They do have some food waste, but it can't be much in magnitude. How does a small organization get involved if they want to?
We're going to talk about the grants?
Organics recycling is available to any businesses. There's maybe at least half a dozen haulers who offer organics in the county. So you've got a selection to pick from, and it's going to grow more, that service, and the cost is going to hopefully become more competitive. But it is available, and places like coffee shops that are not required are already doing it. Small restaurants that want to do it for the good nature of it or the feel good or for their customers' sake are already doing it and will continue to want to do it. So they're free to do it, and the resources are available to them as well.
So they just reach out to their local hauler?
Their hauler, yep. Yeah.
So that's a key part of the business recycling grant program, is we know that the startup funding is really tough sometimes, especially if you didn't have it in your budget for that year, but all of a sudden a manager at the coffee shop or group of employees really want to get started, that it can be hard to come up with a few $1,000s out of nowhere. And so this grant program offers those resources to get the containers, you get free labels, pays for the first few months of hauling, can pay for a 6-month supply of compostable plastic bags, and pretty much everything you need, the assistance from Andre and our other staff to get going. And then after that, really just turning it into the regular way that you do business.
And in addition to questions, if you guys have some examples of things that you're doing that are going well or that you really need specific help with, raise your hand. So,
I do want to, while you're thinking about those, I have one point that I do want to make that I didn't make in the presentation, is that the requirements only require you to separate food waste and only do that back of house. And again, the whole reason is to make it as easy as possible, to get the bulk of what we're after, which is the food waste. That gets the most weight out of your trash, which can save you money. It has the most nutrient value in it, so in terms of composting or feeding animals, it's really most of what the processors want. So there's a number of reasons why to just focus on that. However, if you want to separate out other stuff, if you want to go after the food soiled paper products, that's perfectly fine. If you're going to do that front of house, we highly encourage you to do that only if everything, all of your foodware is reusable or compostable, so that it's completely a no-brainer and everything goes into one bin. If you have a couple of things that are compostable and other things are recyclable and other things are trash, front of house is going to be a nightmare. And so that's why we don't want it. But if you do want to make that complete conversion, then we'll work with you, and those are eligible expenses through the grant program.
questions or examples? Yes.
Can you recommend a resource for listing biodegradable or compostable products like trash liners, those type of things that we could share with others?
Yes, we do. We have vendors listed on our website. We've changed our links recently. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So since this is being recorded, I'm a little bit reluctant. I believe is it all under business recycling now?
No, business organics.
Business organics. Okay, so it's all under Hennepin, which is HENNEPIN.US/business organics, and business organics is all one word. And we do have list of organics haulers, the service providers, as well as vendors of compostable products there.
Great, yes.
I actually represent one of the haulers that does provide organics collection, so I'm very familiar with this. And, but my question is geared more toward capacity. As you bump up the volume of collected organics, what does the county see as far as repository places for this? We as a hauler take most of ours to a transfer station. I believe it winds up down at the mulch store in Rosemont, but there's also capacity issues down there, similar to like the HERC facility for waste, capacity issues there. Has the county given any thought or have any, I guess, potential ideas on where all this additional material is going to go as opposed to just to animal feed? Because we've tried that before as well. And just as you said, John, the concern there is contamination. We utilized as an option for customers, pig farmers, and that has really decreased because of the contamination issue and the concern for the animals' well-being because of what you stated. So is there any, can you shed any light on that, or maybe that's not your jurisdiction, where the capacity issue will, how that will be addressed?
Yes, actually, that's that's something I think about a whole lot. That's about 90% of what I'm working on right now. And so we did address it in the master plan. We have a whole section on expanding and improving organics recycling infrastructure. So the transfer station, I'm assuming the transfer station you bring it to is the county transfer station in Brooklyn Park, where most of the organics comes to our transfer station, and we have a specific bunkered area where the organics is received. If everything goes right, we are going to break ground next year on an expansion of the transfer station specifically for organics that will hopefully be done by 2021. So on the transfer side, a transfer station is a place where a lot of waste is accumulated and then it's sent out to the different places for it to be processed or recycled, because it would take more time and money if haulers went directly, every time their truck was full, they had to take it to a compost site or to a landfill. So instead they bring it to transfer stations so that they can turn around and get back on their route more quickly. And then we accumulate things and send it out 20, 25 tons at a time in a big transfer trailer. For organics, it's an end dump, if you know what an end dump is. And so that's one thing. The composters have more capacity currently. The mulch store or SET near Rosemount, they actually have additional physical capacity already that will absorb some of that growth. There is a composting site in the North Metro in Becker that was operating until a couple years ago. We are actively working with them to reopen that site. And then there's the other composting site that we send material to right now, which is the Shakopee, Midwankaton, Sioux Community site in Shakopee. They receive about 1/3 of our material right now. They're also talking about expansion. So near term, we have tens of thousands of tons of growth at the composting sites. Long term, we are looking at anaerobic digestion. So in the summer of last year, we put out a request for qualifications to start gathering information about qualified developers of anaerobic digestion facilities.
Which is
a way to, composting is done with oxygen. It's done aerobically. And the little bacteria in the compost piles, you can think of them as just little animals to eat the organics. So they need water, they need food, they need air. And they chomp away and they create this stuff that looks like amazing black dirt. Anaerobic digestion is without oxygen, so it's a different type of bacteria. It's bacteria that live in an anaerobic environment with no oxygen. If you put them in an aerobic environment, they die. And so what they do is when they break down the material, they give off methane. Methane is the main active ingredient in natural gas. And so if you can collect that biogas, which it's referred to as, you can use, if it has a high enough methane content, you can use that for various forms of power. On the back end, you still get a solid residue, which is called the digestate, which is very similar to a compost. So you basically get the compost benefits and you get the energy out of the food waste. So when you think about food, right, we eat food not only because it tastes really good, if it's really good food, but it gives you energy. That's why you're eating food. And so that food waste still has a whole bunch of energy in it. And through anaerobic digestion, you can extract that energy and then use it for various forms of power. And so we're in the midst of, we've got tremendous interest from developers, and we just actually got approval from our board to move forward with the next phase of that. If it all goes well, which we're very far from the finish line on that, and these facilities cost tens of millions of dollars, we're hoping that we could have an AD facility in place in the county in 2023, 2024, which is when we anticipate we would have a gap on the composting side. We would still be looking to use composting as well, and we would send certain things to composting and certain things to AD. So that's a great question, and we're actively working on that.
John, doesn't that process also reduce the volume of the material? I mean, it takes, the videos I've seen of those types of programs, they take a huge pile of food waste, put it in the processor, if you will, and it comes out, and as you said, it captures the methane, but it also reduces the material to, gosh, I don't know, about 1/20th of what the original volume was or something. Isn't that another benefit to it?
Definitely, yes, you're right. It does reduce the volume as well, and if you could think about, how much could be processed on 1 acre, since it's not an open process, you can, hypothetically, if everything is running right, which that would be the plan, there's also less opportunity for odor because everything is done indoors. So you could site it in certain places where you wouldn't be able to site a composting facility, and you can process more material per acre than you could at a composting facility.
That's a great question. Thank you. Who else? Yes.
I'm with Crow Sanderson. My name is Latrice Dasher, and we just built a brand new office building downtown.
It's
We
right
redeveloped
behind
our
our
entire-
building.
Yeah. Okay. So we've implemented organics, recycling, and regular trash on every floor in our office building. I'm on the green team committee in our office building because we have more problems educating people on what is actually recyclable. And recently when we met, we talked about going to strictly offering organic paperware at every coffee station on every floor. For our catering services, we're looking at going just to those that offer organic recyclable materials to make it easier for everybody to kind of learn. I'm wondering if you have an outreach group that comes out and kind of educates staff on the back end users, those people that are going to be the ones scraping the plates. And I mean, do you have a program like that? Anybody that we can contact that can help us educate staff? We also manage retail buildings and commercial office buildings, so we're pushing to do that, and we're finding that we're going to have to build enclosures for these containers too, because we're going to be looking at, just look at cell phone.
Oh,
I mean, we've got a couple, with Applebee's, for instance, they're going to want to go to organics because it's going to be required of them, but we also have Sally Beauty next door. They may not be using it, so is there going to be a pest control problem? I mean, like, those are the things that we're thinking of as far as landlords go. When you've got many tenants in one building with a high-end user versus somebody who probably isn't going to have much recycling aside from Kleenex and paper. But we've got food now, and we've got a pest control problem. How are we going to manage that? That's the kind of stuff that we need to educate the other tenants about, saying that this is a benefit to the environment at no risk to you or your retail center, So we're just kind of wondering, who would we contact?
That is what we exist for. So all those things are really in reiteration of the slides, and maybe we phrase it differently up there or it's new to you and you're not aware of that, but that's what we do, is back of house training, front of house training, whether it's cleaning staff or employees, or like customer service staff, that you sit them in a room, you have a team training, you can call us and just have us be there as a special guest at a monthly meeting. So we do all of that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would I contact you to schedule that?
Yeah, you could start with me. There's a few of us, but you could start with me, or you can come to me through Kim as well. So you can come directly
Absolutely.
to me. Yeah. And then
Yeah,
to
good questions.
touch on the pest thing, that's always a thing, and it can always be a reality when you have food. But the simple way we like to put it, or I would put it, is you have that same waste is there right now. The food is in the trash right now. So oftentimes, possibly, when you separate out the food, you may even get less odors. You may even get a cleaner process.
Okay.
Yeah, not to say that pest is not a reality, but that food waste is there right now. Yeah.
And Bloomington is, I don't know how many of you are in Bloomington, but since this is a Bloomington forum, I mean, their waste storage requirements require things to be stored indoors. So it's a little bit unique in Bloomington. But for those of you who have locations outside of Bloomington, I mean, one big advantage is, as we've seen recently, is we live in a giant freezer. And so with that material being outside in the cold most of the year, I don't think I'm exaggerating. I grew up in a warm climate, so I say most of the year it's cold here, is that the odor, which then attracts the pests, is usually greatly reduced. I mean, definitely, June, July, August, when it's hot and humid, those are the most challenging times. But I agree with Andre that typically if you didn't have a lot of that issue beforehand, you're less likely to see it. And you have to work on, making sure lids are closed, making sure lids are tight, having the right pickup frequency, etc.
Did you have something to add?
Yeah, I don't mean to counter what you just said, but speaking from experience, the concerns you have when somebody asked about, or this young lady here asked about, how do we address the odor issue? The way you address that is you have more frequent pickup, which adds expense, unfortunately. Because if you have waste, food waste, and it sits there for 3 to 5 days, it will attract rodents. So, I'm sorry to counter your comments a bit there, Andre, but it is different because you're having a concentration of just food. Yes, it was in your waste stream before, but it was mixed in with your other garbage. So it probably got picked up because of the added trash more frequently. Now if it's just diverted to food waste, it's going to sit there most likely longer, and it's a concentration that draws the raccoons and the squirrels and everything else. And a lot of containers that are manufactured now have steel bottoms, but they have plastic poly lids. And squirrels, raccoons get through that in a heartbeat. And so it's the harsh reality of what this is like for businesses is you have to be aware of that. And to John's comments about in the cold weather, the issue there is because food waste has a lot of moisture content to it, it freezes. And therefore you can't dump the tank. So trucks come up, they stab it, they bang it 6 times trying to get it out, then you get a complaint from your neighbor saying, why are they making so much noise? So you have to really think this stuff through if you're going to do organics from a personal realistic perspective. There are aspects of it, and most business owners don't even think about that sort of thing. So
That's why we're having this conversation.
yeah, just to paint a clear picture, and I'm not trying to take away from what you said, but from a hauler's perspective, that's the reality of it. You do get, when you get 25 degrees below zero, that food waste just froze like a solid block. It just does not come out of the dumpster.
Well, it's
And-
9. I just want to, you got,
Oh, I was just going to say,
Yeah.
when it's that cold, you have the same problems with trash as well.
Yes, you do.
right,
So,
right.
I mean, so when it's that cold, if you have paper towels that are moist, they'll freeze to the side of the dumpster. So,
Yeah.
right. So I would, and I would
We just
just,
need to wrap it
one
up.
other thing I would say is, an important thing is bagging the material and making sure the bags are closed. That goes a long way towards preventing leaks and reducing odors as well. Lots of times stuff gets in the bags and then people just throw the bags in the dumpster without tying them off well. So that is an important part when staff are being trained, making sure that they tie those off well.
Well, I know it's 9 o'clock, but I do want to ask Dan Jasper at the mall if you want to add anything as, one of the largest employers, one of the largest footprints in the Bloomington area.
Yeah, I would just introduce my coworkers, Tom and Russ. They're the guys that handle all the recycling at the mall. We've been doing organic recycling for 20 years, maybe, and really proud of our program. I don't know if you guys want to add anything.
I mean, my only question, I guess, is going to be who enforces our tenants to do it. We don't require them to do it right now. We encourage it. We give them the buckets, we give them but if Twin City Grill doesn't do this, is that us that enforces that, I'm assuming, as the landlord? Or does Hennepin County come down on them and try to get them to?
It's the county. It's the county, not the landlords. So part of what we're working on right now is the completing the compliance planning and the enforcement part. We've been already talking to our own county environmental health staff, and we're going to begin discussions with city environmental health staff. It's not a complete one-to-one, everybody who has a food license also will need to comply with the organics requirements, but there's a lot of overlap. So a big part of that compliance and inspection will happen, hopefully, with environmental health inspectors when they go out to inspect for food-related things, that they would also check to see, oh, okay, yep, you're required based on those triggers that you need to have food waste recycling in place, and then they would check to see if you're in compliance, and if you're not, then they would let us know to come out and provide assistance. So it's the county and not the landlords.
And Kim, I would just add really quickly, thank you for doing this meeting this morning, is that I think we're also really fortunate to be in the city of Bloomington, because we think the city team does a really good job of all of these issues. I think they're always on the forefront of environmental issues, so it's a good city to be doing business in.
Yeah, thank you, Dan. In closing, I just want to ask, hopefully you guys can stick around if you've got one-on-one questions. Please feel free, or even talk to the mall gurus there. In closing, I do want to say, to play on what Dan said, I had breakfast on Monday with Tim Sandry, who is the Bloomington Sustainability Commission Chair. And then I'm sitting next to somebody here who's on the Bloomington Sustainability Commission, as well as someone who is so passionate about this. At the Chamber, we recognize that this is not only really good for the environment, but it's good for business. We hope that you're all going to recognize that these are things that are going to help you with your bottom line. You're going to eventually save money. You're going to attract talent because you're taking these steps and these measures to help the environment, to help the community be safer and just more environmentally friendly, and increase your customer base as well. So we really look forward, we collectively as a chamber look forward to partnering with all of you, as well as continuing the conversations with the Sustainability Commission. And we've got Tim and I are really starting to talk about some ideas on how we can incentivize our businesses with some award programs and things like that coming up in 2020. How you measure that, we're still trying to figure it out, much like what you're trying to do. But please stay tuned to some things that we want to recognize our businesses for doing. So the next conversation with Kim, I'm on vacation in April, and we couldn't find another date that would work well, because the chamber, both our Bloomington Chamber and I know Brent Pavia is here from our Minneapolis Regional Chamber. We have so many great programs in April, we couldn't find another date. So we're looking in May, and I've got a couple of topics on the table. We hope to have sometime in the next few months Dr. Joyce Esther from Normandale, and talk about the great impact that Normandale is having, not only here in Bloomington, but across the region. And then we have some statistics to share from a workforce development standpoint. I'm going to see someone speak on Monday that is going to be able to take some really big numbers and some big concepts that we are all facing and put it into some great statistics. Like by 2026, there are going to be so many more jobs than human beings to have to fill them. How are we going to deal with things like that? So I'd love to have a conversation with him so that you all could learn about workforce development. And you're all shaking your heads because you're facing it already. So think about what it's going to be like in even 5 years from now. Okay? Thank you all so much. Thank you to our guests. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This was good. Thank you.